You're listening to Succeed in Medicine, the show for practicing physicians who want to master the parts of their career and life that med school never prepared us for. From interpersonal skills to career navigation to the essential information every physician needs. I'm Dr. Bradley Block, and in every episode, we bring you brass tacks advice and immediately applicable insights from world-class experts, so you can feel prepared wherever your MD takes you and build a life in medicine that's sustainable, rewarding, and actually worth all those years of sacrifice. You've spent years making careful decisions with lasting impact. When it comes to investing, the same principle applies. Lightstone Direct gives you access to institutional quality real estate investments with decades of proven experience behind them. Invest directly, no middlemen, and a $12 billion plus asset under management real estate firm in your corner. Remember, all investments involve risk. Please visit lightstonedirect.com for a full list of disclosures.
All right. Welcome to the Succeed in Medicine podcast. I'm Dr. Cobin Soelberg, a private practice anesthesiologist and principal advisor at Greeley Wealth Management. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Carl Richards to the podcast to talk about his new book. Carl's been writing in the financial sphere for decades at this point. And for many of us, our first introduction to Carl was through the sketch guy at the New York Times. Now Carl's written a new book, Your Money, Reimagining Wealth in Simple Sketches. So welcome, Carl. Thank you for being here.
So excited to have this conversation. Thanks for having me.
You know, I spent some time thinking about you and your work and thinking of ways to describe what you do. So
I'm so excited to see what you came up with.
If you'll indulge me,
Yeah.
Storyteller and guide came up really quick. Magician, I thought was a fun one, but I also thought it was an apt description. And then a really fun one was sage and poet. And, I think the work you do is so powerful, and the reach you have with people, especially talking about money, is incredible. But you have this sort of sneaky way of doing it. How did that come about?
First of all, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I don't know the answer to that question because I'm still trying to sort it out myself, which is why I was excited to hear what you came up with, because I need. But I think what you're pointing to is the work, and the work I've been focused on is this crazy, I just don't even know how it happened. I mean, I'm starting to get closer. It's like lots of research that I've been doing on it, but we somehow completely lost the plot when it comes to money. And the wisdom traditions have all been pretty clear about this danger, about this risk. But somehow a thing that was meant only to be a tool became the end in and of itself for many of us. And consciously or subconsciously, and most of us, and I'm sure most of the listeners to this show, it's just subconsciously. It's not this overt thing, but you think about like work and money are the organizing principles of our lives in the West, like in the States.
Absolutely.
You sort of fit everything else. Like I'll sleep later. Like we'll fit sleep in around work and money. We'll fit the kids in around work. We'll certainly fit our own health in. Like, it's okay. I just am hustling right now. So somehow it's as if like there's this tool in the garage that's meant to be used for a specific purpose, and it's now running your life. It's so fascinating to me. And I know I have some sense of why, but we just got really confused. And I think what the work is pointing to is the idea that let's get money back in its proper place. Let's understand why it's a tool. Let's give it jobs. That's the thing that's been really interesting to me lately. Like we've given money so many jobs it can't do.
It can't do.
Yeah. So let's pretend for a second, like if money joined us on this podcast, like some sort of physical manifestation of money, like as a human,
Right.
Like there was a third person if you were watching the video. And I'm really curious. I've been playing this game lately, just thought experiment. Like what would money say to you if it joined? And what I've stumbled upon is this idea of money being, if it were to join and be able to say something to us, it would be the picture of like a terribly earnest, but incredibly discouraged and disappointed golden retriever. A golden retriever would be like, I tried so hard. Just like, I know all you want, like that whole love thing, the happiness thing,
Right.
the security thing, the enough, like the finally feeling better about yourself, like the self-esteem, all of those jobs. I tried so hard to do it. And it turns out I just can't. I'm zeros and ones stored in a cloud. So that's kind of what, to me, that funnels all the way to the investment decisions and the credit card I use for my app. And like, how can I get all of that stuff more aligned with what really matters to me? So that's kind of how it happened, is just like trying to trace back, like, how did we get into this weird spot where we've completely lost the plot?
Yeah. And it's so fascinating. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, we've given money this job that no matter how hard we try, it can never complete that job. So I'm curious, Carl, I know you've lived in other parts of the world. Do you feel like in other places like New Zealand, for example, are they trying to make money as ubiquitous as we do here, particularly in the US? Did you feel that? Or is that something that's pretty distinct to where we are in the United States?
Well, I don't want to overstate it because it's a bit, it's sort of like romantic, but this realization really dawned on me in our time in New Zealand. So we moved to New Zealand for what was supposed to be a year and turned into 4. And granted, we lived on the South Island in a small town. I spent time at Auckland, and I know it was different in Auckland. I spent time even in Christchurch. It was a little different in Christchurch. We were in a small town in New Zealand, and my first introduction to this was I had a friend who would introduce me to people there, and I would always ask them, what do you do? In like the first 30 seconds. Oh, what do you do? Like we do in the United States. Oh, what do you do? And they would always, it's super interesting that in the United States, we answer with a statement of identity. I am a doctor. Fascinating, the embedded identity in that. But the point here is, after like 5 or 6 times of doing this, my friend pulled me aside. It's like, mate, why do you ask that question? We don't ask that question here. Like, why don't you ask me about my family? Or why don't you ask me, what do you like to do on holiday? Or what do you like to do for fun? It was very clear the organizing principle wasn't money in that community. Now, I think the reason it's so much that way in the States is because we're competitive. We're always looking for, we're a resource-seeking species. Some of this is hardwired. Like, if I've got a chance to get my own, to protect my own, like some of that is hardwired. Then there's the competition. I mean, this audience is a driven, wouldn't be an exaggeration to say typically type A, like successful, all of those things. And then there's no billboard in our community for like, he spent a ton of time helping people at the mountain bike clinic, or she's a great mother. There's a systemic problem that's really prevalent in the States. And I'm not arguing whether it's bad or good. I'm just saying it is a problem. We've removed a lot of the collective solutions and we've focused more on the individual. And again, I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm just saying it's led to the practical reality. Sometimes work and money has to be at the center of your life.
I mean, it's pretty powerful. And one of the things that's so fun working as an advisor with other physicians is that in so many ways, the money piece is not the primary issue anymore. We can get to where that's not the problem. And I completely steal this from you, your righteous tricks, right? Like, sneak this in of like, okay, so you have everything taken care of financially, but how can we help you live the fullest version of yourself? How can we help you find purpose and meaning outside of just this identity as a physician? And it's sneaky, but it's also the most fun part of my job. And I look at the clients I have and I love when they call, because these are the conversations that we get to have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I did a lot of my work when I had my own firm with anesthesia, radiology, and ER, sort of the kind of like no plant and equipment. I remember there used to be a reference like lunchbox doctors, right? Like show up, do my shift, go home. And a lot of that was intentionally chosen that way so that where I live, it was so that they could spend time in the mountains, here in Utah. If I had lived in Scottsdale, it might have been so they could golf. I got to spend a lot of time with my clients in the mountains, climbing and skiing and having these kind of conversations. It's so interesting how hard it is, because it's a bit like that old Zen parable. The old fish swims up to the 2 young fish and says, "Boys, how's the water?" And the 2 young fish say, "What water?" It's really sneakily hard. to get clear about, especially when there's options. And I would argue there's options within 3 to 5 years out of residency, there's options, maybe faster, right? It's really hard when there's options to not get caught up. I remember having the conversation specifically with the emergency doctor client. He happened to be a neighbor too. And he was always like, man, every one of my colleagues we lived in a nice walkable community close to the university, close to where he worked, but the houses were small, 1,800, 2,000 square feet. And our neighbor who had been there for 80 years reminded us that the Johnsons raised 7 kids in our house, right? So like the idea that that's small is already funny. My point is he was always telling me like, all my colleagues always drive me crazy asking me, when am I going to buy my doctor house? What are you living in that house for? Well, that's a sneaky little, it's not overt keep up with the Joneses peer pressure. It's sneaky. I mean, this was a little overt, but that person bought that thing. That's kind of silly. That's how it starts. And then suddenly we're off. And the only way to prevent that is to get clear about who you really are. Like what really matters to you.
Well, and it's so easy to get distracted from that. And going back to how we started, it's so easy to use money as that metric. And if you're making more and earning more, and you have these external markers, that maybe that will fill that hole in your soul, but it never does. And, you know, some people never wake up from that. Many people do, thanks to some of the work that you do. So I've always wanted to ask you, Carl, like, do you have as much fun writing and creating these sketches as all of us do reading them and working through them with our clients? Because it seemed like really fun, enjoyable work.
Yeah, well, thank you. Man, that's such a good question, because there's part of me that's like, yes, of course. And then there's another part of me that's like, I have been thinking about, there are images. I recently had an experience, and now I can't remember which one it was. Oh, I can remember one of them, where I have been thinking about single words or single lines for more than a decade. I wouldn't use the word torturous, but there's a part of it that's just sort of like, and I love when the moment happens where it's like, oh, and one of the most popular sketches that's been out forever, I removed one word one time, and it was actually 2 words. And I remember, oh, that's perfect now. And that was a decade of thought. It was like a sliver that was under my finger, but I couldn't quite identify that it was a sliver. And I'd been walking through the mountains and riding my mountain bike and on river trips, and that would come up and I would think about it. So in that light, yeah, I love trying to get it down to the simplest piece. The new book, there are 101 sketches, 101 essays. Some of those essays are 2 sentences, and none of them will take longer than 3 minutes. So that process, I both despise and love. And here's what I mean by that. I don't love being in complexity. Love it, but I want to get out of it as soon as possible. So like a flight to simplicity. That feeling to me is a bit like confusion. And then like when I get out and I can wrap it up in a bow and be like, yeah, that's the thing that matters. I love that entire process, even though part of the process is really not my favorite place to be.
Well, we appreciate you doing this work. And I think it's always easier to write more, and like you said, make it more complex. But the power in what you do is stripping everything away until you're at that very essence. And hearing you describe it, I can see how that process for you, as you're in that place, could be arduous and not as much fun.
If you like this podcast episode, you're going to love the other shows over at the Doctor Podcast Network. For instance, Luxury Cruising. You know that moment? Sipping champagne, watching the sunset from your private balcony suite? Yeah, that's the magic of luxury cruising. Dr. Crystal Seditis takes you there on Luxury Cruising, explore the world in style. From the most opulent ships to insider secrets on upgrades, she's your guide to traveling first class at sea. If you're dreaming of your next escape, this is the podcast for you. Search Luxury Cruising and subscribe. Your suite awaits.
Let's talk a little bit about your book. How do you want people to use this book? How do you want me as an advisor? How do you want people, what do you see people doing with this book?
So I have been avoiding writing another book. It's been a decade since the last book came out. I think 11 years actually. And I have been focused mainly for that decade on conversations. We had almost operationalized the idea that I was not going to write another book. It was more just, I don't ever want to touch the keyboard again. I just want to have really meaningful conversations with people. And luckily, there's a way to build a business around that called podcasting now. So that's all I've been really focused on. And then I realized that this wasn't new to me. I'd seen it within the New York Times column. People would print the sketch out and tape it to their fridge or whatever. And the emails I would get wasn't like, this is visually so striking. It was, I had this on my fridge and my daughter asked about it. And it led to this conversation. Or I have this in the office. We did calendars every year for 10 years. And the stories we'd get about the calendars would be like, I have this in the break room at the office. And my coworker and I had this conversation. And I started to realize, it's like, oh, the sketches are actually, I started calling them conversation grenades. You sort of throw them in a room, a conversation breaks out. And so I started to realize, if I want to start more meaningful conversations about money, could I make a book that felt like something you could pass around, right? Something that was like, hey, look at this. It could sit on the coffee table. It could be on the side table in the foyer in the office. Like, we have a bunch of different professionals that have them in their foyers, versions of this, like printed out sketches or whatever, so that it would be like, hey, what do you make of this? Could it be something that would spark a conversation after dinner with a family around a dinner table? Could it be something that the Audible book's going to be really fun? I'm doing it right now. I'm reading it right now, and I'm describing all the sketches. So they were like, let's just leave the sketches out. I was like, no, let's describe them. I'll talk about them a little bit. So I'm wondering, like, on a road trip. So the short answer to your question is, I hope it's used to start a bunch. In fact, I have a small little goal of, like, I want this book to result in 1 million conversations about money. Like, that's my humble little goal.
Well, knowing your work, I see you meeting that pretty quickly. I went through it, and the book's fantastic. And, some of these sketches will be familiar to people who've seen your work in the New York Times. And there's a lot of new ones, particularly at the end of the book. It's interesting because we've hit around a few of my favorite sketches already when we talked about money, thinking about, like, number 2, when you're more than what you do, you have a little, what you do is the small circle inside the much bigger circle. Or do I make enough? Number 97. And I love that first one, more than what you do, especially, this is one I didn't realize that I was having this conversation with my clients all the time. Again, all physician clients. So that's part of your identity, but you're also a father, a mother, a parent, all of these other things. And how do we honor that entire being of you when it's so easy to get all of this sort of authority and credit just for being a doctor? So that's one that I'll be going back to time and time again with my clients. So thank you.
One of the questions I've been really interested in lately is, like, where do you get your kicks from? And I was thinking about that as I was preparing for this conversation, because I know, right, like, with physicians, and this happens to entrepreneurs too, there's a period of time where all the excess capital, everything, time, money, energy, and attention, it's all going into the career / residency. And then there's a day you wake up and there's excess. There's, like, extra capital. You're like, oh, I have money. What am I going to do with it? And maybe there's a day you wake up and there's extra time or energy too, but there's certainly a day where you wake up and there's extra money. And I love to think about, like, be really clear about, let's talk about investing specifically. Like, what's the value you're trying to get out of investing? Because if the value is to meet your lifetime financial goals and live a meaningful life, that portfolio looks different than if the value is to have something to talk about with your friends. And they're both okay. You just need to be very clear. Like, if what you're interested in is having something to talk about with the pharmaceutical rep that comes by, for example, because I heard that story so many times, or, something to make yourself feel a little fancier in the community, like start a restaurant or a coffee shop, which I saw that example hundreds of times, or cars. We've got a really well-known, I won't mention anything more, but doctor here locally that's really into cars. Again, fine, but just be clear about, like, I call this value capture. Like, what value are you trying to capture out of the experience? Because I would argue that you're a little better off kind of separate, like, investments are to meet lifetime financial goals. those types of investments, and maybe I can get my kicks a little different way. And I think if you get more clear about, like, why are you doing this? Is it because you want a t-shirt so everybody knows, or is it because you want to meet goals? And those are different things. And I think that idea of like more than what you do plays into that a bit. Like, is this a piece of your identity, or is this to fund future liabilities or future goals? And I think those things are just fun to think about. And there's no right or wrong answer necessarily. Like, if you're investing because it's entertainment, okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, the
Yeah.
question I would ask is, are there other forms of entertainment that are better? That's up to you to answer. But the idea of just being clear, like, oh, I'm doing this because it's entertaining, is really, really valuable.
Yeah. I mean, what you're asking, right, is what game am I actually playing here? And it's not something I think we think about frequently until you keep unpacking that. But understanding that and clarifying that is so powerful in any realm of why you're doing it. You know, I'll tell you, when I started my practice, I was in Portland, and it wasn't that I wasn't aware that what other docs were doing, but I don't know that I paid as much attention. But, you know, now I live in Bend, Oregon. You know, it's similar to where you are in Park City. And I mean, it's very obvious. We were just having this conversation yesterday in the operating room about, you know, one of the docs is driving like a 10-year-old Toyota, and another doc is giving her grief. It's like, spend $100,000 and get rid of it. Everyone here, just like Park City, has a Sprinter van parked in their driveway, right? I mean, so you see it and feel it in a different way, and it's noticeable and it's prevalent.
Yeah, one quick story. I had another really good friend who, again, in emergency medicine, and he was bemoaning the fact of something like that. Like, he was pointing to something, and I think it was housing again. I think he was pointing, because he lived in our same neighborhood again, pointing at housing. Like, I can't believe they spend that much money on that. But what I realized was he had an $8,000, this was, 20 years ago. He had an $8,000 titanium mountain bike. And back then, that wasn't the normal price of a mountain bike, which we're getting pretty close. It was a lot. And so we all have our things. You know what I mean? Like, we all have our things. The important thing is, I think, knowing him pretty well, that was a reflection of what he actually valued. He had spent time figuring that out. He used it all the time. Like, he rode to and from the hospital too. There was mountain bike trails behind the hospital. So he all the time. And it wasn't a mimetic desire. Like, in other words, a desire that he learned on Instagram. It was actually his desire. And so I think getting clear, like, there's nothing wrong with a $200,000 Sprinter van if it's what you want. And you'll find with things like Sprinter vans and second homes is there's another piece to this where the idea of owning some things is much better than actually owning them, right? Like, I see this with second homes and boats, like the idea of owning a second home. And then I've heard more unwinding second home stories than I love our second home. So how do we solve for that? Okay, well, could you rent a home just like the one you think you want in the place that you think you want it for a week? Cool. Done that. Loved it. We still want to. Okay, great. Because we think we'll spend summers there. What if you spent a summer there?
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? You might be one of those people, because there are happy second homeowners,
Right.
who use it. But the point here is not second homes, and it's not boats, and it's not Sprinter vans or mountain bikes. It's just getting clear about who you are and what you want. And by the way, I promise you, the cute story you're telling yourself right now about what you want is not correct. And the only way to find out is just slowly test. Just slowly run little experiments to find out.
So what are your blind spots, and who do you go to help unpack those stories, Carl?
Yeah, I mean, so super interesting question, because by definition, I don't know what they are, but I know they're there. And we have a great financial planner who pulls no punches. So I have actually been fired from the financial planning meetings. So my wife goes, I'm not allowed to come anymore. And I've been trying to get fired for 20 years, but they just give me a set of, here's operationally what you are to do. And then obviously, if my voice or opinion has not been heard and is not aligned with what I'm being told to do, then I obviously get to speak up, and they'll listen to me. I mean, for a little bit. It's my wife, an awesome financial planner. So I have 2 or 3 really good friends who will, I hope, tell me when there's one of the sketches, your life and your money. I think that's the definition of real financial planning, the overlap of those, your life and your money. Sometimes if you consider those as a Venn diagram for a minute, your money in one circle, your life in the other, sometimes they're just circles with a space between them. Like how I'm spending my time, money, energy, and attention isn't actually aligned up with what I say is important to me.
Yeah.
Like, and everybody listening, look, I would be equally as guilty, if not more, than anybody listening. So I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm just saying it would be interesting if you pulled out your phone right now and just looked at screen time, right? And you say like, I like to be healthy, or I like to ride my bike, or I like to coach my daughter's soccer team. I just don't have time. I bet we could find time on your phone. You know what I mean? I bet we could find an hour a day. I don't know about the rest of it. So my phone tells me, like, I've got some tools that expose inauthentic behavior, and I've got a couple friends, and I've got a really good financial planner.
Yeah, I think that's just like the work I do as a physician. Like that is one of the gifts of being a planner, is getting into that space, holding their hand while you're having that conversation. But all of us have those moments where we're inauthentic. Really quickly, I'd like to talk about one of my favorite ones that I'm trying to apply this year, which is number 75, getting in over your head. This is what I'm trying to live this year, of learning the skill of just continually not feeling ready, not feeling comfortable, and just sort of stepping into those spaces where I may not feel like I belong in that room. And part of it is I have an almost 4-year-old at home, and I want to model that behavior. This is how you have an incredible life, of just jumping in and figuring it out on the fly. So there's some pretty powerful sketches in here, Carl.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. So the idea is, if you imagine a Venn diagram, but a bar graph is just 2 bars, and one of the bars says what you think you can do. The small little bar says what you think you can do. And the big tall bar, at least double, if not a little bit more, says what you might be able to do. And the gap, the difference between the 2 bars, is labeled get in over your head. And I think, like, for example, people listening to this are successful, smart people, and maybe there's some area of your life, like let's say having a conversation about money with your spouse,
right,
or partner, that could be something where you're just like, I don't think I can do that. Like a real conversation about money we fight every time it comes up. Or maybe it's like, there's a little piece of me who doesn't like what I'm becoming at work. Like I can feel myself getting sucked into the matrix of comparison and competition, and I don't like that. And maybe you're like, well, geez, one of the solutions that keeps getting suggested to me is more time alone with quiet, like even maybe meditation. Again, all of those things are like, those are things that scare you. My belief and my approach to this is just like, you start doing it, right? Like if you want to become the kind of person who is clear about their values and not getting sucked into the matrix, then that kind of person, maybe more time in the garden or on your mountain bike or in meditation would be helpful. If you want to become that kind of person, well, what does that kind of person do? Why are you meditating for 20 minutes? Well, because that's what I am, the kind of person who does that. We hold retreats at our house, and this last year we did a women's retreat. It was for women financial advisors, so women only, and they allowed me to come. My wife and a female financial advisor hosted it, and they allowed me to come be a sort of a guest speaker every once in a while. Well, we didn't know what we were doing. Like, we just decided to do it. Now, here's what's crazy. We loved that experience. It was really great. But we keep getting asked to do a couples retreat. So it's like a financial advisor with their spouse or partner, and the kind where you'd spend time together talking about what it means to navigate risk and make decisions under uncertainty when it involves the business and the client work. We don't really know what we're going to do, but we decided next year, we just picked the dates. We're just going to announce a couples retreat, and then we're going to be way over our heads. But I know now from time in the high mountains and time on rivers that, like, the best part of any experience is going to be the part that I was surprised by and I didn't know. And I now am comfortable enough in the skill of saying, I don't have this specific skill, but I have the skill of figuring things out when they're happening. And so I think the best thing to do is like create a forcing function.
Yeah.
If there's something you want to change, create a forcing function. You want to spend more time with your daughter? What does your daughter like to do? Oh, she plays soccer. Oh, they need an assistant coach. Do you care about being an assistant coach? No. You care about the time with your daughter. Signing up to be the assistant coach, you enrolled yourself, which I love that term. You enrolled yourself in something that is going to create the thing that you want. And it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little bit in over your head. And you'll wake up 6 months later and be like, that was so easy. I know how to do it again.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And it's so amazing. And I definitely will be leaning on that with my clients for sure.
Yeah.
So I've been to one of your retreats, and I think I was in tears within about 5 or 10 minutes of showing up at your house, Carl, which is where that magician description came from, because your and Corey's ability to create a safe space for others to have these powerful discussions, it really is both of your superpowers.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. And I admit I'm totally ripping this off directly from you, but
Please.
I did find a poem from David White that I would like to read to you, because you've shared some pretty powerful ones with me over the years, if you don't mind.
I love that. Where is it from?
It's called Sweet Darkness from David White.
Yep.
When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. Time to go into the dark, where the night has eyes to recognize its own. There you can be sure you are not beyond love. The dark will be your home tonight. The night will give you a horizon further than you can see. You must learn one thing: the world was made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn. Anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you.
That's amazing.
I had to read it a few times before to not tear up with it, but
yeah, I had a chance to go on a walk with David at the base of the Grand Teton, and it was just he and I and a friend, and both my friend and I are the same age, 53, and David's older than that. And he has spent a lot of time talking about how this need, and I think this audience particularly won't like hearing this, just like I don't like hearing this, and need it, is that there's an increasing need among, I'm going to use the word successful. There's an increasing need among like post-resource, where like resources taken care of, for time alone, time to get clear. Like, what is your world? And that's a perfect poem. Thanks, Cobin.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I have a favor to ask. You listened to the episode until the end, which means either you fell asleep or you really liked the episode. So please write us a 5-star review, take a screenshot, and email it to me so I can send you a quick guide on how to earn patient trust in 20 seconds or less. Email me at brad@physiciansguidetodoctoring.com and feel free to suggest a topic or guest. I take your requests seriously. The views expressed on this episode are those of the interviewer and the interviewee and do not represent the views of their employer or even their significant other. Even though the magic of podcasting makes it sound like I'm talking directly to you, this is not a doctor-patient relationship, and this is not medical advice, or financial advice, or legal advice, or really any advice. Thanks again for listening to Succeed in Medicine.